U.S. Imperialism 101. So you have the United States and you have country X. Now, imperialism is a system in which the financial elites forcibly expropriate or exploit the land, labor, resources, and markets of overseas population. And from this, the corporation, the financial elites, accumulate capital, which is a core component of capitalism. So, in other words, the end effect of all of this is that through the profits, they further enrich themselves at the expense of country X. Now, in order to keep this system going for them, they use their influence on the state, who in turn guarantees access to country X via military or CIA means. So if country X is not cooperating with the corporation, then the state, the United States, will overthrow the government, install a puppet regime who will then provide access and put the country up for sale for the corporation to exploit their land, labor, resources, and markets at will. And this is imperialism in a nutshell. My name is Joey, and this is the Geopolitical Insurgent. Now, in this episode / lecture, we will be going over the basics of U.S. imperialism. Now, for the first example, we will go into how imperialism is used to expropriate resources such as oil. Now, you have the United States and you have country X. Country X has oil, the United States has an oil corporation. The corporation wants to be the one to exploit the oil so that they could export the oil to global markets, and in turn, they themselves would profit from the oil of country X. Now, say if the oil were instead nationalized, then it would be country X, who would be the ones to export it to global markets and profit off of their own natural resource instead of the corporation. Now, the corporation cannot see this happen because they would lose out. So, through their influence on the state, who in turn guarantees access to the resource on behalf of the corporation, the state will then overthrow the sovereign government of country X and then install a puppet government or puppet regime who will then privatize the oil. Now, as you see here, that's the second scenario of nationalize the oil would go away, and the multinational corporation would have free reign on the resource of country X because now there's now a puppet government in place, subversive to the interests of the corporation. In the next example, we will be going over how land is exploited in imperialism. Country X has farmland, 10,000 acres of farmland. In the U.S., an agricultural corporation would want to exploit the farmland of country X so that they could grow cash crops, export it to global markets, and have the profits from the cash crops go back to them. Now, obviously, if country X, they nationalize, they collectivize, that means that farmland they use for their own ends, so they grow their own food, they could export their own crops and then get the money for their own crops, or, just focus on sustainability. But obviously, this cuts into the profits of the corporation, so they're going to use their influence within the state, and the state in turn guarantees access. They're supposed to guarantee access, and they do this by overthrowing the government of country X, and then install a puppet government, and that puppet government would then auction off the farmland to foreign corporations. So this is how it works for land. The next example, we'll be going over labor. You have the United States, you have country X. Country X has a labor pool, the United States has industry. Say the labor pool is ideal for making manufactured products for industry and exporting a lot. So they exploit the labor pool, pay them very low wages, so they make a lot of profit to get all that money. But say if instead the country had strong labor unions, high wages, less hours, then this would not be ideal for their profits, industry's profits. So, user influence within the state in turn has to guarantee access on behalf of the industry to the labor pool. So, what are they going to do? We'll come back to these three. Overthrow the government, then they install a puppet government. The puppet government, what they're going to do? They're going to eliminate labor laws. So, industry could exploit the labor pool and make manufactured goods exported at high profits, low wages for the labor pool. Which brings us back to what imperialism is. Now, as we discussed earlier, in imperialism is when the financial elites or multinational corporation exploits and expropriates the land, labor, resources, and markets of country X or any country of its choosing to accumulate capital, with the end result being the enrichment of the few and the impoverishment of the many. So in this system, the multinational corporation must be able to go anywhere of its choosing, and they rely on the state to guarantee access, and the state does this via the national security state of the United States, which happens to be the military and the CIA. And overall, the main mission of the U.S. national security state is to make the world safe for the multinational corporation and its global system of capital accumulation, which means any policy country X may undertake, whether it be the four listed below, would be inherently unfriendly to this system, which would lead to taking coercive action, which would include overthrowing the government of country X, installing a puppet regime, and that puppet regime would now give the multinational corporation access to its land, labor, resources, and markets, which is what imperialism is, and we will see more examples of that. But first, let's go to a quote by Michael Parenti in the book Against Empire. Now, in this book, Parenti writes, imperialism is a system in which financial elites forcibly expropriate the land, labor, resources, and markets of overseas populations. The end effect is the enrichment of the few and the impoverishment of the many. Imperialism involves coercive and frequently violent methods of preventing competing economic orders from arising. Resistant governments are punished, and compliant ones or client states are rewarded with military aid. Attached to no one country, international finance capital is interested in making the world safe for its investments and for the overall system of capital accumulation. Now, this ties into everything we've been going over throughout this whole episode, is what is in this paragraph. Now, we saw the land, labor, resources markets, and we saw how the financial elites access these through coercive means. And we see how any economic policy taken by country X, for example, which would be nationalizing a resource, which would be collectivizing land. Now, those type of policies constitute, as Parenti says, a competing economic order. Now, the purpose for the corporation and for the state is to eliminate this barrier so that the multinational corporation, the financial elites, could exploit the country, so the country is up for sale. And they do this through coercive measures, which we will see in the next U.S. Imperialism 101 episode. So in the next U.S. Imperialism 101 video, we will actually see the client state and the U.S. national security state in action. But for now, this is the Geopolitical Insurgent. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and see you next time.